Hi guys, welcome back to iFashi. Today's video I'll be showing you guys how to draft a basic bodice block. First, we're going to define what a basic bodice block is. A block is like a representation of a body. You either use your personal measurements or a standard measurement to draft it out. You can achieve a whole lot from this particular block. You can get your blazers out of this basic block. You can get your corsets, different types of corsets out of this block. You can get your regular basic bodies, tops and dresses out of this block. Basic bodice block can be used as your base, as the foundation for pattern drafting because it's carrying your accurate body measurement. You can add your allowances or your alterations later on other papers that you'll be cutting out from this block, right? This is the foundation of drafting the upper parts of the bodice, and that is what we'll be doing today. Thank you guys for joining us. Now let's begin. So here's our pattern paper that we'll be drafting on. This is a detailed bodice block and not the regular one. We'll be learning how to do our bust contouring and under bust contouring in this pattern. You just have to be patient to learn and understand the process in getting this done. So the first thing I'm going to do is to take 2 inches downwards from the top of my paper to get my top line, and I'll label it top line. After that, I'll divide this paper I have here by 2 because I'm going to be drafting the front and the back on this particular paper. So I shared the paper into 2 and I made a straight rule. I labeled the first side closer to me, the front, which is where I'll be putting all the front measurements, and then this other side I labeled it the back, where all the back details will be measured. So now let's start. I started by taking my half length measurement, which is 17. I took it both front and back. There will be 4 lines on this front and back together, which is the waistline, the half length, the hip line, the bust line, and this top line that we've already drawn. So after taking this waistline, I labeled it waist on the front and on the back. The next thing I'll do is go down by 9 inches to get my hip line, and that line will also be on the front and the back, which is what I'm doing right now. So after taking the hip line and labeling the hip line, the next line I'll take is the bust line, which is the 4th line that will be on the front and back of this paper before we start taking the separate lines. So this line is my bust line, which the measurement is taken from your shoulder to your bust point, and I'm using 10.5, which is what I just marked, and I made a straight rule. I'll label it the bust line. Then after that, we are done with the 4 lines I said will be on the back and front of this pattern. So now let's start taking the front measurements. We'll go up on that bust line by 1.5 and make a straight rule, which will be labeled as our front bust line. After that, we'll also go up from that front bust line by 2 inches, which will be the chest line. You also label it your across chest. That's what I'm doing, 2 inches upwards. That will be our chest line. After doing that, the next thing is to come up on this our top line, come down on that from that top line by 1 inch for our shoulder slope. That is where we will slant our shoulder to. Come down by 1 inch and make a straight rule and label that line your front shoulder line. And after taking that front shoulder line, we are almost done with the front lines. We've not started taking the body measurement. So let's go to the back and take the back lines now. Now we'll start from this waist line on the back, the half length line. That's where you go up to take your nape to waist measurement. This is how to take your nape to waist measurement, from your waist to the bone on your neck. That's how to get your nape to waist measurement. Mine is 15.5, so I took 15.5 upwards, from this waist upwards. I made a straight rule there, which would be my nape to waist. That would be the new neck for the back. We will not be taking the neck measurement on that top line. We'll take it on this nape to waist measurement. This helps you avoid zip bulging. And after that, this bust line that came from the front to this nape to waist line we just took, we're going to divide what we have on that box by 2, divide that box equally, and make a mark on the midpoint of that box, which will now be labeled our across back, which is where we will take our across back measurement. So you just label it across back. After doing that, the next thing is to go to the nape to waist measurement, that neck, the new neckline, come down by 0.75 and make a mark there, which is where we will slope the same way we slanted our neck measurement in the front, the shoulder. That's where will be the back shoulder line under the nape to waist. Just, I hope you understand. Just pause, slow down, and listen carefully and watch what I'm doing so that you don't get lost. Now we have taken all the lines. The next thing now is to start taking our measurements on all of these lines. We have our front shoulder line, we have the front bust line, the bust line, the waist, the hip on the front, and now we have the nape to waist, the back shoulder line, the across back, the bust line on the back, then the waist line on the back, and the hip line on the back. These are the lines we've drawn so far. The next thing now is to start taking our measurements on them. It's good to use your pencil for your measurements markings so that when you make a mistake you can clean it. I'll be using a marker for the sake of the tutorial so that it will be visible enough for you guys to see. Now let's begin to impute our measurements on all of these lines. All of the measurements will be divided into 2 except the waist, which will be divided into 4. So now let's start. I'll start by taking the bust measurement first. We will not divide our bust measurement into 4 in this pattern. This method, you are going to take your front bust measurement, which is from one end of the bust on the front to the other. I have 21, so I'll divide my 21 by 2. This is why I said we'll be dividing our measurements by 2. So I'll divide 21 by 2, which is 10.5, and I'll mark it on my front bust line, not on the bust line. Kindly take note. On the front bust line. Then I also measure the back of my bust. I have 16. Now I will go to this bust line on the back and take that 16 divided by 2, which is 8. That's what I'm taking now. I took 8 on the back. If I had divided my bust measurement by 4, which is the normal method, I would not have this measurement like this. That's why I said this is an advanced detailed bodice. So the next we're taking is our waistline, as seen on the picture above. Take a rope and tie the boneless part of your waist to get the exact waist. Then take your waist circumference, divide it by 4. That's what you will put on the waistline. After that, we will go and take the hip measurement. Now on this hip measurement, you're going to take your hip circumference, which is normal, and then take your back hip arc. Back hip arc is this picture you're seeing on the screen, from one end of the hip on the back to the other end, not the full circumference. So what you have on this back hip arc, you're going to divide it by 2 and put it on the back. I'm marking 10.5 because I have 21 on my back, and on the front I have 10, which if you plus 10 plus 10 for front, 20, then for back 21, which means my hip is 41. If your hip is 42, measure what you have on the back and then minus it from the circumference. If you have 22 on the back and your hip is 42, what is remaining to put on the front is automatically 20. So you divide it by 2 and place it in the front. After that, I added 0.5 inches allowance on the hip line and on the bust line only. And then we'll go ahead and take our front shoulder measurement. This is how to take a front shoulder measurement as seen on the picture. So measure what you have on that front and divide it by 2. Impute it on that front shoulder line we took earlier. The same thing goes to this back shoulder line under the nape to waist on the back. Measure it as seen on the picture and impute your measurements down there. And guys, we're almost done with this. Almost, I said. The next thing is to start connecting the lines together. When you're connecting the lines together, the hip measurements goes to the waist measurement, and the 0.5 I added earlier on the hip and bust line will go straight to meet each other. That's what I just did here. Do not be confused. I connected my hip to my waist and to the bust, and then the 0.5 I took for the allowance, I connected it together. That's what you're seeing on this box. on the back and front. The next thing we're going to take now is the across chest. Remember, we have a line called across chest, the 2 inches we took from our front bust line upwards. Then we also have across back. As seen on the screen, this is how you take your across chest and across back measurements. Measure what you have there, divide it by 2, and impute it on both lines, on the back and on the front. Then I came down, straight down from what I have there to the bust line, and then the front shoulder line measurement, I connected it together. That gave me that not so straight line. I also connected what I have on my back shoulder line to meet this across chest measurement. I drew it straight down, not so straight as well, to mark out my armhole. Now to get the armhole, I'm dividing what I have from that front shoulder to the across chest, divide it by 2. On the midpoint, go inside by 0.5. We're trying to get our armhole curve here. After that, we'll take our ruler and our curve rule and mark a curved line. We'll do the same thing on the back to get our armhole curve. After doing that, the next thing we'll do now is to mark out our necklines on both front and back. I'm using 3.3 on my neckline. How did I get 3.3 inches? I used the standard method of dividing your bust measurement by 16 plus 1. So my bust measurement is 38. I divided it by 16, I got 2.3, and I added 1, which is 3.3. So that is the standard way to get your accurate neckline measurement, and that's what I did here. And then go inwards by 3.3 and downwards by 3.3 as well. I used my curve rule to mark out that neckline. For the back neck, see this nape to waist, I marked the same 3.3 I used for front, and I'm also going to go up by 1 inch. From that 1 inch is where I will slant down to my nape to waist, and then that 1 inch I also slant to go and meet the back shoulder slope. Remember, we made the back shoulder line there. That's where the shoulder will slope. I also slope the shoulder of my front, and we are almost done. The next thing we're going to do now is to take our dart measurements. Now to get our dart measurement, we're going to go in by our nipple to nipple measurement here, which is our bust span measurement. I use 8, that's why I marked 4 on my front and I marked 5 on the back. That's because you add 1 inch for the back. So I came down by 6.5 to mark out where my dart would stop. 6.5 from my waistline on both back and front. So I'm marking my 4 inches straight on the front and 5 inches on the back. So now what we have, we're going to take what we have in this box and divide it by 3. Divide it into 3. For the front, I have 3, which means on my waist dart, front waist dart, I'm going to take 1 inch on the right, 1 inch on the left. Remember, we're dividing it into 3. The remaining, the third one, will be taken on this straight line where you see this hand sticker. That one I'm taking there is a mistake. I'll clean it later. It's supposed to be taken on this straight line. I repeat the same thing for the back. I measured what I have inside that box. It wasn't up to 3 inches, it was 2.75. I divided it by 3 by counting the lines on my tape. I added 1 part on the left, 1 part on the right, and the third part is supposed to be added to that straight line as well. I'll correct it later. So I marked out my dart. So we have our dart ready. Next thing we're going to do now is to take our bust dart for the front only, so that our front will be equal with our back. So we're going to measure, for this bust dart, we're going to measure what we have from our front bust line to our bust line. Remember, we went up by 1.5, so definitely that's what we have. So we're going to come down on the bust line by that 1.5 and slant it towards your bust point, that 4 inches you took, and then we're going to shade it out as our bust dart, which will be cut out later. Next thing I'm doing here now is to snatch my under bust. So I came down by 4 inches from the bust line and I went out on both sides by 0.5 to snatch my under bust. And guys, we are almost done again. Almost. Very simple, very easy. It might be confusing at first, but if you do it continuously by practicing, if you repeat it once or twice, you find out that it's very simple and you will be amazed by the results, how it will take your corset game or normal basic bodice outfit from 0 to 100. So thank you for watching to this point, guys. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done that already. Let's continue. So now I just took my measurements on both back and front to be sure it's equal. The front is longer with 1.5 inches. So when you cut off this side bust that's on the front, it will be equal. This basic pattern, bodice pattern, is ready to use for your tops, your dresses, for corsets. Now we're going to go to the corset section where we'll draft out our cup from this pattern. So the next thing we're going to do now is to go to our bust contouring section. This bust contouring section, first thing we're going to do is to take our compass and draw a circle around our bust point area where we'll be taking out our cup corset later on. So as you see me doing, I came down by 4 inches from my bust line and I used my pencil and compass to mark a circle. If you cannot use compass, you can as well just mark your 4 inches all around to get that circle accurate. So after getting that circle accurate, next thing you do is you divide your shoulder by 2. Divide your shoulder into 2. The midpoints, you connect the midpoints down to your bust line and then you cut it out. As you see me doing, I cut down straight down from where I divided my paper into 2, and then I cut it through my side bust that we took, because I want to open up this shoulder that I just divided to get our bust contouring. So now I'll fold in this my side bust that and hold it down with a transparent sellotape, and then I'll go to this opened shoulder and measure what I have there. I have 2.2 inches on that opened shoulder, and I'm going to be doing the bust contouring from that shoulder line with these different colors of pencil. So guys, this part can be very tricky because of its calculations involved. Kindly be patient to learn and understand. So now I'll measure what I have there and then mark it out from the beginning of this divided paper. You know, the paper is opened, right? So after taking what I have in between, I'll mark it from the beginning of the opened paper outwards. I'll mark it as 100%. That's what I marked with. I put exactly what I have on the open shoulder. That's the 100%. And I marked it with the yellow pencil. Then I also divided that by 2. What I have on the open shoulder, divided it by 2. I marked it with the orange colored pencil. And that was my 50%. 2.2 divided by 2 is 1.1. And that was my 50%. I marked it. And now I need to get my 25 and 80%. 25% I used this blue pencil. 25 of 2.2, it means you will divide that 2.2 by 4 to get the 25%, right? So what you have is what you mark. If you have 2 inches, 25% of 2 inches it means dividing 2 inches by 4. So what you have is what you mark down there. So now I'm going to connect all these things, all these 4 lines I marked. I'm going to connect it down to the bust point. I have 100%, I have 25%, I have 50%, and I have 80%. That's why I use different colors of pencil so that I will not get confused. And I also labeled it on top. Each of them has its numbers, and I'll connect the lines to the armhole. In this part, the 100% is not connected to the armhole. The 100% is used for off shoulder. If you're making off shoulder, that's when you will use that 100%. So the 100%, because it is off shoulders, it does not have any armhole connection. It is connected directly to the bust point. So for the 80% as well, it's also used for tube and strapless outfits. So to get the 80%, you would minus 4 over 8, which is half of your tape, half of an inch. Minus it from the 100% you got, right? If you minus it, the remaining, like for example, you have 2 inches in between the divided space in your shoulder, yeah? If you have 2 inches, if you minus 4/8 from 2 inches, you have 1.5 left. That will be your 80%. It is also connected directly to the bust line. It doesn't have an armhole connection. It is only 50% and 25% that is connected to the bust line and also connected to the armhole. 25% is used for clothes with shoulder. 50% is divided by 2. That's, I have 2.2 divided by 2 is 1.1. That's my 50%. It's connected to armhole and connected to bust point as well. 25% divides what I have there by 4, connected to armhole, connected to bust point as well. This is the confusing part I told you earlier, but if you practice it, you would understand it. So guys, now that we are done with the most difficult part of this drafting, every other thing we are doing from here is just an icing on the cake. So thank you for watching to this point, and I hope you understand so far. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, and remember to share this video. The next thing we'll be doing now is totally optional, I want to mark out the shape I want on the down part of my top. So I will be using this pattern for corset tutorial. So what is left for me now is to draft out the cup. At this side part, I'm marking out the shape of the corset I want. If you don't want to have this shape, you can just cut according to what you have drafted before. This is me just giving the down part of my top this shape because that is what I want, right? So when you're making this shape, remember I made a mistake earlier on the dart on my side. That dart that is supposed to be on the straight part, that is where you would get your shape from. That's why you see those stickers, hand stickers, letting you know that was a mistake. I later corrected it before the end of the video. So guys, we're almost done. This is the center front of our corset, and this is the side front. If you want to cut the center front, you have to close your shoulder on either 25% or 50 or 100, depends on what you're cutting. So if we're doing since we are doing off shoulder, I will be closing on 100% or 80%, depends. 80% and 100% is used for tube, strapless, and off shoulder. Yeah. So I want to mark out my cup. We are entering the corset part of this drafting now. I want to get a corset out of this pattern. I told you earlier that you can use this bodice to make any outfit you want to make, be it cup corset, Victorian corset, normal basic bodice, top, or dress. It is your basic bodice block that can serve you for anything you want to make. So you just try and draft it and keep it aside, and you'll be using your tracing wheel to trace out anytime you want to get an outfit from this basic block if you don't want to repeat it. But it is also advisable for you to repeat it so that you will get used to doing it. It will not be confusing for you anytime you want to do it again. So now I've closed my shoulder to get my cup. I went in from that center front by 0.5. You know, that's middle part between the two bra cups. I came in by 0.5 because by the time you open it up, you know, the center front will be cut on fold. By the time you open it up, it will be 1 inch in between the two bra cups. Yeah. So I came in by 0.5 and I marked out my cup shape. Then from this down that bust dart, I also traced up to the armhole point for the second cup, and I closed it on top to my 80%. Remember, it's 80% I'm using. So right now I have my cup 1 and cup 2, which will be joined together later. So this is my center front, my side front, my yoke upwards if I would be needing a yoke, and then the cup. Guys, we are done. Seriously, we are done this time. I'm not joking. Now let's go to the back. The yoke of the back is totally your choice. Whichever you want, you just mark it out here. I'll be doing the yoke that has just 2 buttons beneath my neck, and then it will be opened at the back. So I just use my curve rule to mark it down from the neck, and the back yoke is ready. Easy peasy. The back doesn't have a lot of work. What I just need to do now, either you mark out 2 inches, remember to the back for your side allowance, by the time you're cutting, or you cut out 2 inches if you're using an eyelet loop. So this is our cup. This is the side front. This is the yoke. This is the center front. This is the side front. and also close the shoulder dart when you're cutting your center front or the yoke. And for the back, this is the loop part that I've drafted out. This is the back yoke, and this is the side back and center back. So the next thing I'll do now is to just trace it out on another paper. Now I've corrected. Remember, I was showing you earlier that this dart is supposed to be closer to the straight lines. This is when I realized we are almost at the end of this video. So guys, the next thing I need to do now is to trace it out with my tracing wheel. As you see me holding it, I'll just this is me tracing out on another paper. I placed this center front on the edge of that paper because I do not want to add extra allowance. There's no allowance on your center front. So I'm tracing out my center front, and then after tracing it out, this is what you would have. I would use a pencil to highlight it. I'll also add 0.5 inch to the sides all around because I will be joining the sides. So I added 0.5 inches all around to the down part, and then I highlighted it, traced it out, marked it out with my pencil. I'll go ahead and trace out the side front. While tracing out the side front, close your side dart as you see me doing. We'll close that side dart and trace out. If you've watched to this point, congratulations, and I hope you understand. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for watching to this point. I'm grateful. So after tracing out all of the parts, the yokes, the back and front yoke, the side front, center front, the cups, the side back and center back, after tracing them out on this new paper, I'm just going to go ahead and cut it out and place it on my fabric and cut. And we're going to end this video here so that it doesn't get too long, and the part 2, which will be the sewing part of the video, will be posted next. Thank you so much, guys. So guys, I've drafted it out on the paper, and this is the fabric estée I'll be using. I've gone ahead to cut and iron. We'll be sewing this corset together in our next video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.